Hello and welcome to this quick voiceover of the presentation which I gave on the 12th of October, the topic of which was about developing independent learners through everyday classroom practice and basically focused in particular on assessment for learning. So key questions were, where are we with AFL and how can AFL promote student independence? So I tried to give a short overview of the history of AFL and how it's sort of developed, making the basic point that it's been around for a few years, nearly 15 years. Governments have invested heavily. That's not always been helpful. And the basis of trying to promote teacher ownership, making it something that we do, that we're in charge of, that we have ownership of, rather than the product of a strategy or a series of training sessions provided by On High. I had a look at the 5 key strands of AFL: learning intention, success criteria and feedback, tasks that elicit evidence of learning, and enacting students as owners of learning, and tried to get across a sense that AFL was a process rather than something that you might do as an add-on to your sort of everyday teaching. We then had a look at arguments against AFL, particularly the idea that isn't it saying that if we all work within this framework, that everything's done in the same way, that teaching becomes robotic, kids get bored. What about creativity, excitement, difference, surprises, spontaneity, all those sort of valuable, essential things for a good classroom? And I tried to get across the sense that, which I believe really, that creativity and innovation in lots of contexts work best when channeled through structure. I gave this slightly cack-handed metaphor of an orchestra to try and support that, but to get across the idea that within music, for example, structure is absolutely essential as an enabler of creativity and innovation. Trying to apply the same sort of thinking to AFL really. So the idea isn't that it's a straitjacket, that therefore there's a set of techniques we all have to use. It's just a kind of framework, a structure that we could work within, which then will allow us to help each other and innovate within the framework. And then going on to make the suggestion that AFL allows for consistency but also creativity, providing a common framework, enabling colleague support but leaving space for, and in a sense demanding, creativity, innovation, individuality, eccentricity, and all these sort of spontaneous, exciting things. So I went on to have a look at some examples, looking at learning intentions first of all. Obviously getting across the sense of them being focused on learning that's taking place and not on tasks, looking at ideas like precision and focus, and the skilled element of putting together a good focused learning intention, and the importance of that in helping students become independent because they know what they're trying to do, they know what they're trying to achieve. I had to talk about the language as well, looking at the way that it can get confusing with all the learning objectives, aims, intentions, outcomes. I would suggest just using learning intentions. What do you intend the kids to learn in that lesson? I went on to have let's look at some examples actually of pretty poor learning intentions from my own teaching in the past. I have got better, I hasten to add, I think. But there you've got a sense of, if you look at the aims that are on the board at the moment, just way too wide and unfocused. My contention really was it's really difficult for kids to engage independently if the learning that we're offering them or explaining to them or showing to them is too unfocused and is not achievable within the amount of time that you've got available. Okay, then we went on to look at the role of success criteria. Really important. I mean, I really believe in success criteria as being sort of highly significant in promoting independence and engagement. Explaining to students what success might look like, opportunities for differentiation, the social role in making it clear to students who might not know, and the importance of not assuming that kids will know what quality looks like. So yeah, and then we looked at some examples of different ways that you might do that. I suppose one thing I wanted to try and get across was questioning really of if we are overly dependent on this way of setting success criteria. To get a level 4 you need to get level 5 you need to get level 6 you need to. If that's our sort of dominant way of getting it across, are we taking care and being sure that we're still catering for independence here? Are we being too prescriptive in our success criteria and telling kids exactly what they've got to do, and what might the impact on that be on student independence? So I then went on to look at alternative models. Here's an example of one that I've seen used really well, whereby you differentiate success criteria by explaining what skilled response to the task might be, what skilled work might look like. That would focus on things like accuracy, competency, clarity, and then having this idea of excellence criteria. What could you do to explore excellence? Skilled is something that you'd be able to achieve. Excellence is something which is open-ended and it can explore in a variety of different ways. Therefore, students have to choose to some extent, to a greater extent, how they're going to approach the task and how they're going to show success in their learning. So finally, I touched on this idea of feedback and the idea of linking your feedback to the learning intention and success criteria, thereby making it manageable and motivating, because you're not assessing every aspect of the kids' work, but you're really clear what it is you're looking for in your feedback. You're feeding back on making a really coherent process when used with learning intentions and success criteria. So final thoughts really were, the AFL is something which is still going to be around. It's here to stay. It's not one of these initiatives that's going to kind of slope off and never be heard of again. But it's our responsibility, not governments, that we are the ones who can make a difference with AFL and make it work for us and make it something exciting. And in my own view is that it can be powerfully exciting and transformational. I think it transformed the way I teach much for the better, really. I wanted to get across a sense that it's an enabler rather than a constrictor of creativity, professionalism, excitement in the classroom, with the sense that we're aiming for improvisation around a theme rather than robotically everybody doing the same thing. And the final thing I'd say here, which I didn't really say at the time, I should have done, is to restate this idea about it being a process, not being something which just happens every so often, but rather being sort of the guiding set of principles for schemes of work, for lessons, for learning, generally in the school. Okay, that was that. Do come and talk to me about it. I'd be very happy to discuss any aspect of this stuff at any time. All right, thanks.